In 2020, a man named Timothy Bliefnick appeared on the game show Family Feud.
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?
Honey, I love you, but said I do.
It got a few laughs, but no one was laughing 3 years later, when that same man was accused of murdering his wife.
I did not murder Becky. The idea of murdering someone, let alone the mother of my kids, is not any part of who I am.
February 23rd, 2023, Quincy, Illinois. A quiet town nestled along the Mississippi River was shaken to its core, not by a tornado, not by an accident, but by a crime so violent, so personal, that it brought national attention to a place where most people didn't even lock their doors. Inside the bathroom of her home, 41-year-old Becky Bliefnick was found brutally murdered.
She was shot 14 times and there was one miss, so there were 15 rounds fired.
It wasn't random, it wasn't a robbery, it was an execution. In a town where everyone knows everyone, it didn't take long for suspicion to turn inward. This is the story of a woman who feared for her life, a husband who said he had nothing to hide, and a community that would never be the same again. When officers arrived at Becky's home on Hampshire Street, they knew instantly this was no ordinary homicide. The killer had fired 15 rounds, 14 of them hitting Becky, with one missing its mark. The scene was contained, nothing was stolen, there were no signs of struggle beyond the broken bathroom door, and the traceable path the killer took through the house. Becky had tried to call 911. Her phone dialed 9112-6, but she never got the chance to finish. The phone was found behind the bathroom door, knocked from her hand. She had been alive for minutes after the first shots, minutes in agony, minutes in fear, alone, waiting to die. Becky was a mother of 3, a nurse, a sister, a daughter, and a friend. Known for her compassion and selflessness, she had dedicated her life to caring for others. Her 3 sons, ages 12, 10, and 5, were her entire world. On the night of her murder, they weren't home. They had been staying with their father, Tim Bliefnick, just a mile away. Becky was in the midst of a contentious divorce. She had filed for an order of protection. She had sent messages to friends describing verbal abuse, threats, and fear. She told them Tim was becoming increasingly unstable, but nobody believed that this would happen, not in their town, not to Becky. Police quickly pieced together how the killer entered the house. A patio chair had been dragged below a window in one of the children's bedrooms. The window had been pried open. The intruder entered, moved quietly past Becky's bedroom, and kicked in her bathroom door. That's where they found her. Investigators later reenacted the path, showing exactly how the killer had scaled the house and moved with purpose. This wasn't a burglary. This wasn't random. This was someone who knew the house, someone with intent. When someone is murdered in the middle of a divorce, suspicion often turns to the spouse. And in this case, it didn't help that Tim Bliefnick had recently appeared on national TV. On an episode of Family Feud, asked what the biggest wedding day regret was, Tim joked, saying, "I do." It was meant to be funny, but after Becky's murder, the clip went viral. The line felt eerie. Prosecutors later said it wasn't just a joke, it was a glimpse into a mindset. Tim denied any involvement in Becky's death. "I did not murder Becky," he told reporters, but prosecutors believed otherwise. Becky had been afraid. In the weeks leading up to her murder, she texted friends describing Tim's rage. She said he had screamed in her face, shoved her, thrown things. She filed for an order of protection, but a judge denied it. Her sister Sarah, and many of Becky's friends, had long suspected Tim was capable of violence. They urged Becky to seek help. She was in the final stages of her divorce. Trial was just a week away. She told Tim she wasn't feeling well and asked him to keep the boys an extra night. That simple request, meant for her kids' comfort, may have opened the door for her killer. It wasn't just the motive that pointed to Tim. It was the evidence. Surveillance video from a neighbor captured a figure approaching Becky's home in the early hours of the morning, about 24 hours before the murder. That same figure appeared again a week earlier, on Valentine's Day. Around that same time, Becky had received a text from her neighbor, warning her about a stranger in the driveway. Investigators found a bicycle with no reflectors less than half a block from Tim's house, similar to the one seen in surveillance footage. They found Aldi grocery bags in his home, shreds of which were recovered near Becky's body, suggesting they had been used as a makeshift suppressor. And then came the ballistics match. Police had found spent shell casings in Tim's home. Forensic experts said 27 of them had been fired from the exact same gun used to kill Becky.
Shell casings in his basement. Shell casings in the basement were fired by the exact same gun.
Prosecutors believed the motive was simple: control. Becky had left. She had spoken up. She had documented Tim's behavior. The divorce was going to trial. She was taking back her power, and Tim, they said, couldn't handle that. They pointed to search history found on his phone. How to make a silencer, how to clean gunpowder from your hands, how to open a door with a crowbar. To prosecutors, this was clear premeditation. To Tim's defense team, it was circumstantial. Tim claimed he had no knowledge of any of it, that he was being painted as a monster based on a narrative, not facts. The trial lasted 6 days. Jurors were shown videos, crime scene photos, and a timeline of events. They were told how Becky had tried to protect herself and her kids, how she had documented her fears. They saw the texts, they heard from her friends and family, and they heard from experts linking Tim to the murder weapon, the break-in tools, and even the Aldi bag fragments. The defense argued that the evidence was weak, that there was no DNA linking Tim to the scene, that he had an alibi, but the jury was unconvinced. On March 31st, 2023, Tim Bliefnick was found guilty of first-degree murder.
Guilty of first-degree murder.
Judge Robert Adrian had a choice between a 45-year sentence or life without parole. He chose life. You researched this murder, you planned this murder, you broke into her house and you shot her 14 times, the judge said. You will die in prison. It was a rare moment of clarity in a sea of confusion. For Becky's family, it wasn't justice, but it was something, a statement, a line drawn in the sand. Becky Bliefnick was more than a victim. She was a mother, a sister, a daughter, a healer. She loved fiercely. She lived selflessly. And in her final moments, she was failed by a system that couldn't protect her. Her family now advocates for domestic violence awareness, for listening to victims, for believing them. If someone tells you they're scared, her sister Sarah said, you have to believe them and do something. Becky's life was taken in the most brutal way imaginable, but her legacy may be the lives she still saves. In the silence that follows a tragedy sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is listen.